Let's take a deep breath together. There's something a little weird going on energetically this morning. Not quite sure what it is. And we're just going to breathe it in and breathe it out. And just know that the power and the presence of God is in the midst of it all, whatever is going on. The power and the presence of God is all that there is. And so we stand in that knowing this morning as we move through this service. The theme for the month, as you know, is service. As we go through our 7 sacred practices, one of our sacred practices is service, savor, sacred service, selfless service. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this month. And the theme really is passionate service. Passionate service, not just service, but passionate service. And I love the idea of passion and the idea of service and of putting those two things together. And when we can follow our passion, that strong emotion, that thing that we must do, and apply it to service and allow our service to come, our passion to come through our service and our service to come from our passion. Wow, look out, world. Because we can change the world in that way. We can change our own lives. We can change the lives of everyone around us. We can change our communities. We can change everything just by allowing ourselves to be those vehicles through which God serves. And God serves through our passion because our passion connects us to our source. And so when we can follow our passion, that thing that we must do, that thing that we wouldn't be happy if we went through this life without doing that thing, without giving that thing, without serving in that way. That's what our passion is. Last week I shared my passion, and I've got quite a bit of feedback from some of the people here. My passion for shopping. And several people told me that they were going to give their spouses my cell phone number when their bills come out. So I that's my passion, and that's the way that I serve. You serve in your own way. So I'm not, that's a disclaimer for me. But really, last week we were talking about the little ways in which we serve. And this week we're talking about why serve? Why serve? Why serve? And I think that's, I asked you to, I invited you last week to ask yourself, how can I serve? And this week I'm asking you, why serve? Why are you serving? Why do you give service? Do we give service because we think we should? We have that should blanket on, you know, the one that wraps itself around us and tells us what we should do, and then we do things from a place of obligation or a place of I should because somebody else is doing it, or for some reason other than our own authentic way of doing things. That's when we have that should blanket on. So are you serving out of guilt? Are you serving out of obligation? Are you serving because that's what everybody else does? Are you serving because you're expecting something in return? Because that's an ego way of going through life. There's so many ways that we get caught up without even realizing it, that we get caught up in service and in helping. Oftentimes that's helping, but we get caught up in that without recognizing why we serve. Why are we giving? Why are we spending this time? Why are we taking the time to give of ourselves in the way that we do? And I think it's a really important question to ask ourselves so that we know our motives. Because our service is really more about who we are than what we do. Because in service, we bring who we are to whatever it is that we are doing. And so I invite you to really search your heart, search your beingness to determine, why am I serving? Why am I giving? Why am I doing this? And then go for it. Once you get clear that what you're doing, how you're serving, why you're serving, is from a place of an open heart, from a place of love, from a place of being that place and space through which God can express, being that place through which love can express, because love is always seeking expression. When we can serve from that place, then we can really go for it. Then we can really go all out with our service. And so, because this is Mother's Day, I was thinking about the mothering being the ultimate service, the ultimate selfless service when we're mothering. And I recognize that Mother's Day is a difficult day for many people because there's a clash between idealism and reality with the small r. Because the ideal mother, whatever that means, and it's different things for different people, but the ideal mother, some people had the mother who practiced unconditional love, the mother who was nurturing, the mother who was always there, the mother who was always giving, the mother who was always serving. And that's wonderful. And many people did not have that mother. Many people didn't have that mother who was always giving, always serving, always nurturing, always being available. Many people are that mother, and many people are not. But you know, it doesn't really matter because all of that fades into God. When we come to recognize that whatever we didn't have, whatever we haven't done, however we haven't been as mothers ourselves in our own mothering, then it fades into God. It really does. When we can just take a breath, release, and recognize that we start from this point rather than looking back. And how can we move forward regardless? But again, I recognize that this can be a difficult day on Mother's Day. And mothers who have made transitions, there's sadness in our hearts. We grieve with all of you who have lost their mothers and who don't have relationships with mothers. We grieve with that also, mourn that loss also. And we recognize that mothering is something that comes to us from many places, from many avenues, from many people. And it doesn't have to be gender specific because we have many men who mother and we have many people who haven't given birth who mother. So it's just a broad thing, and recognize that when we can be in that place of giving, that place of nurturing, that place of loving, that place of caring, that place of serving, then we're mothering and we are engaging in high and holy service. And so I think we should all give ourselves the opportunity to open our hearts and to see how whatever we had when it came to an earthly mother, how are we living our lives today, and how can we serve in that situation? How can we serve so that there is the recognition that it all fades into God? I was thinking about, let's take a breath together. I was thinking about my own mother today. I think about her a lot, but I was thinking about her today, particularly for Mother's Day. And she passed away many years ago. We had a relationship that was kind of like oil and water. We loved each other, but the biggest problem in our relationship was that she didn't realize that I was her favorite child. So it kind of stirred things up sometimes because she didn't know I was her favorite child, and I was constantly trying to convince her that I was, but she didn't quite get that. And so we went through our lives together kind of with a tug of war. And about 2 or 3 years before she passed away, I brought her to live with me. And everybody who had ever known us throughout our lives could not believe that happened, that she would come to live with me. And that was a big heart-opening experience because we were so different, and underlying it all, we loved each other a lot. And there was still that oil and water thing going on. And she still wasn't recognizing I was her favorite child. So fortunately, my daughter was her favorite. So that helped because she could be a buffer for us. But what I really came to realize as I looked back on the last few years we had together was the service that I provided for her, the caring. I became her caregiver, and there were many things she wouldn't allow me to do for her, so I had to hire other people to do them or get other people to do them. But the whole point was that this was my way of being of service to her and bringing her into my home, making her as comfortable as I could, making things as easy for her as I could, doing all kinds of wonderful things for her that I'm not sure she thought was so wonderful, but things that I did for her. As I look back, I realized that was what service was all about. You know, service pierces the veil of the illusion of separateness. It pierces the veil of the illusion of separateness. And we know that the only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation, first from God and then from each other and then from ourselves. And so my service pierced that veil of separateness from my mom. And it helped to unify us. It helped to unify my relationship with her. And so service is the great unifier. That veil of separation falls away when we get into a place of service, a place of giving from the heart, a place of giving when we don't expect anything in return. But we're giving, we're serving to serve. We're serving to serve. Think about that. We're serving to serve. I've been thinking this morning that service is like a big forgiveness scrub. You know, it's like a big forgiveness scrub. You can just wash away all that stuff. The more you serve, the more you can wash away that stuff. The resentment and the judgment and the blame and the shame and the guilt and all that stuff, all the criticism and the condemnation can be washed away with service. The more that we can give, the more that we can serve. I don't mean in a floor mat kind of way. I mean a heart-opened kind of way. When we can serve from that place, that's where healing happens. When we can serve from that place, as I said, the forgiveness scrub is what service is. It just washes away that stuff that you realize didn't matter anyway. And when we can get into that place of service, of giving, then that's how we begin to recognize truly that service is the great unifier. Service is the great healer. Service is the great way of becoming aware of the presence of God in so many ways, in so many places, places that we wouldn't even think about, ways that we wouldn't even think about. And so I invite you to look at why you're serving and then make the decision to serve anyway. If there's something that needs to be healed, if there's a relationship that needs to be healed, that's when the question comes up, how can I serve in this situation? How can I serve in this place? How can I serve in this time? How can I serve in this relationship? How can I serve today? How can I serve? Because first of all, we recognize we're serving God. And then we're serving the other person. And you know what? When we really get into service, we're serving ourselves. We're really serving ourselves, and that's the beauty of service. We get more out of it sometimes than the other person does. That we get so much out of service ourselves, and so that's what's really important for us to recognize is that there's so much for us to gain, there's so much for us to heal, and we can do that in the way that we give, and we can do that in the way that we serve, we can do that in the way that we recognize each other. And so let's just take a breath together. As we just look at the relationships in our lives, we look at the situations that we find ourselves in. You know, sometimes when we get involved in community, particularly a community like this, when we get involved with a group, service is great. It's warm and fuzzy when we're all working together and we're all serving and we're all giving and we're all doing the same thing. And then all of a sudden, something happens. Somebody says something. Somebody does something. Somebody doesn't do something. There's an insult, there's a misunderstanding, there's whatever. And then we want to take our ball and go home. We want to take our marbles and say, well, I don't want to do that anymore. You know what I mean? There are times when it's warm and fuzzy, but service isn't always warm and fuzzy when we're doing it in a community. Because that's when we have to be willing to open our hearts, be willing to allow the old stuff to fall away, be willing to look beyond the insult, look beyond the misunderstanding, look beyond the miscommunication, look beyond that human stuff and how a Thurman calls it thicket, looks beyond that thicket in which our hearts get caught. And our hearts can get caught in that thicket over and over and over again. And the thicket is nothing but that, just thicket. There's no reality to it. And so when we recognize that that's what's happening, and we can take a deep breath and come back into that place of recognizing that God is all there is. come back to that place of recognizing that there's but one power, one presence, one life, one mind, and we are all a part of that, then that's when we can allow the thicket to fall away, and we can be in that place of reality with the big R, that place of the power and the presence of God. And that's what's important for us. And when we can do that, then we can serve from the place of an open heart. We can live our lives from the place of an open heart. We can live our lives from a place of unity. We can live our lives from a place of knowing that the allness and the fullness of God is right where we are always. And it's right where each of us is always. And then we can start to recognize that power, that presence, that life within each of us. And we serve from that place. That's why we serve. From that place, so that the allness and the fullness of God can be revealed in and through and as our lives. And in and through and as our lives in any situation in which we find ourselves, in the community in which we find ourselves. And so service provides us a new way to see God's presence every day. A new way to see God's presence every day. It provides us a new way to forgive every day. In every situation, how can I serve? How can I let this service wash away this stuff that's trying to stick to me that I'm not going to allow to stick to me? How can I serve this day? Why serve this day? Why serve? Because I want to be in that place of oneness. I want to be in that place of knowing that God is in the midst of everything. I want to be in that place of experiencing my oneness with each and every being that I meet. Experience my oneness and seeing the presence and the power of God everywhere. That's why we serve. That's why we move into that place of selfless service, where we are not so concerned about ourselves as we are the greater good. And so I invite you, let's take a breath together. Think about on this Mother's Day. Think about on this day of mothering, how can I serve this day? How can I serve in a way that all the other stuff just fades into God? How can I serve in a way that all that stuff just fades into God? We recognize it's not about anything. All that stuff just fades into God. And we just open our hearts more and more and more and more into that bigger space, so that there's more love and there's more peace and there's more joy and there's more harmony and there's more balance and there's more God expressing everywhere. You know, we talk about wishing that the world were different, wishing that things were different today, wishing that there was more peace, wishing that there was more harmony, wishing that there was more balance, wishing that there was more togetherness in our society, wishing that there was more oneness. And you know what? That's all about change. We wish that things were different. But we have to be the change we want to see. We have to be the change we want to see. If we want things to be different, we have to be different. And our difference, being different, starts with service. It starts with our service in little bitty ways. It starts with our service in places we wouldn't even think about, in situations we wouldn't even think about. And as I said, in our relationships. And that's what a big thing is with the forgiveness thing. With the forgiveness thing, service, we cannot serve with a closed heart. Think about it. We cannot serve with a closed heart. You may be doing something. You may be helping somebody. You may be going through the motions, but service, that selfless service, comes from an open heart. And so we can't serve with a closed heart. So if there's something that we're holding against somebody, there's something that we're holding against ourselves, or there's something that we need to release and let go, if there's something that we need to forget about, and I mean forget here in our hearts. If there's something in that way that we need to just let it fade into the nothingness from whence it came, then we can do that through our service. We can do that through that open-heartedness. And so that's what I'm inviting you to do today and to think about today as you go through this time. and thinking about how can I serve through my mothering on this Mother's Day and beyond today. How can I serve through my mothering? Where can I mother? How can I mother? Who can I mother? Maybe it's myself. Maybe it's my neighbor. Maybe it's that stranger. Maybe it's that person I don't know very well. Maybe it's my community. But those are questions that we can ask ourselves. Why serve? We serve so that the power and the glory and the beauty and the allness and fullness of God has a place through which it can work freely and completely in each and every life, in each and every moment of each and every day. And so let's take a breath as we just turn within in this moment and just recognize that service is high and holy work. Passionate service is high and holy work. Mothering is high and holy work. So on this Mother's Day, I recognize that Mother, Father, God principle within each of us. I recognize that Mother, Father, God principle that is everywhere present. No spot where it is not. It is right here, right now, right where I am. It's right here, right now, right where each of us is. For this power and this presence and this allness and this fullness is my very life. And it is the life of each of us here. No separation. Nothing can separate us from it. Nothing except our sense of separation. And so in this moment, as I speak this word for each of us, we release that sense of separation and we come into the knowing. We stand in the knowing. I stand in the knowing that God is all there is. I stand in the knowing that God is my very life. I stand in the knowing that God is the life of us all. I stand in the knowing that it is from this place of awareness that I speak the word for each of us this day. Speaking a word of open-heartedness. Speaking a word of willingness. Speaking a word of wholeness. Knowing that there's nothing missing. That we are whole. Just as we are. We're perfect. We're complete. And so we release anything that would appear to block our wholeness. We release the doubt and the fear and the unforgiveness and the resentment and the past and know that all that stuff fades into God, the only thing that is, the only thing that's real. And so I'm just saying thank you, Father, Mother God, for the healing that's happening in each and every life. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for the healing that happens in our relationships. Thank you for the healing that's happening in our body temples. Thank you for the healing that's happening anywhere that anything appears to be other than whole. This is what I'm accepting for each of us this day. And so as I open this circle of prayer, I'll pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. That the power and the presence of God is everywhere, in the midst of every situation, every circumstance. God is. And so I just say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. God is. That's all we ever need to know. God is. This is a truth on which I stand. God is. I'll just allow it to be now as I say thank you, Divine Mother. And that just allow it to be. And so it is.